Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Define Disaster. This is Battlefield 1, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at supposed leaked concept art for Battlefield 1. Now, with the June 12th EA Play Battlefield 1 gameplay reveal event just around the corner, this is some pretty good timing for somebody to leak out some concept art. And while you may question the legitimacy of this, there is a number of quick reasons I should name you why it is, I would say, possible that this is actually legit concept art. First and foremost, the quality of this art is very high. So if this is a forgery, he would have had to go through some serious work to make this a reality. Second of all, it ties nicely with the information we've already been able to extrapolate from the gameplay reveal trailer, of course, from the Battlefield 1 reveal event. And last but not least, the images, which are over 30 in number, are quite extensive and detailed. So this is, once more, a lot of work to go through if this were a fake. And if it's a fake, frankly, it's a very well done one. But I thought we'd go over these images, at least the images that provide new information for us today, and try to get a little bit more of a feel what the new Battlefield's going to be around. Extrapolate what information we can get from these new leaked images, and of course discuss it here with you guys. Now, with all that being said, let's get right into it before we get too long of an intro going here. The first image I want to talk about is, of course, now on your screen, shows the armored train. We know that there's an armored train in the game. It's been confirmed officially by DICE, and while it's all interesting to see that there's an artillery piece and anti-air on this armored train, this is what we generally expected. What I'm more interested in is the actual destruction going on in this picture. If you see to the bottom left corner of this image, you can see what looks like some kind of support structure, maybe even a bridge, completely collapsing. And of course, we've all got very high hopes for a completely destructible world, and DICE has led us on to believe that we may be going back to the Battlefield 2 days of destruction, where you could just flatten an entire map. This anyway provides lots of hope for these destructive fans amongst us, and definitely looks like you're going to be able to even maybe derail this train, although that is, of course, at this stage only a guess. Now, the next image here is very briefly explained. It seems like we're looking at a new form of tank here. I thought this would be interesting showing. Obviously, DICE has announced there's going to be huge variations in the armored vehicles in this game. They're not like in Battlefield 4, for example, pretty much going to be clones of each other. They are going to have strengths and weaknesses, and as such, it's no surprise that we're going to have hugely different varying models of tanks showing up on the battlefield. Now, the next interesting image we're going to be looking at here has, of course, our standard pilot and gunner. That is two players in a plane at the one and same time. This is something we were already kind of able to get out of the trailer, and the image is already revealed officially by DICE. What I find interesting about the image is that it suggests that there is the possibility that some of the planes will actually be single player seaters or single person seaters, and this shows us a little bit more of the variety that we may be able to experience in Battlefield 1. We know up to now only officially that there will be bombers and fighter planes, and likely that those fighter planes will be two players because we've seen that in the trailer. But this image at least gives hope to those of you who want to fly solo and don't want to rely on some untrustworthy teammate. Now, next image here is something that I find important to highlight because it shows that there will be parachutes in Battlefield 1. Now, this is a little bit contradictory to what we kind of know about Battlefield 1 already. On the one hand, we know there's going to be a dedicated vehicle class, and that leaving vehicles isn't going to be as easy as, for example, as tank driver. I'm not sure, maybe this is different for planes, but one thing is for sure, your classic jump out of a plane with your parachute and then start pestering enemy vehicles or infantry from above, be that now with your pistol as with this image, or in Battlefield 4 with C4 or airburst, is likely still going to be possible. Now, the next image I've picked out here is all about the airship crashing in the background. The reason why I find this interesting is that it's crashing. It's not just exploding or burning up in the air as most air vehicles do in Battlefield 4. They just blow up and then there's a little bit of debris that kind of strays around. This thing seems to be legitimately crashing. And why this is so exciting is it will, of course, create a dynamic battlefield. This will, of course, lead to huge amounts of destruction down below, and it may even change a map, blocking off an entire lane for an enemy team because there's suddenly a big massive airship carcass lying around. So for me, this could be providing a little bit more dynamic, interesting kind of variety on the battlefield if this concept art is showing something that can actually happen in game. Next up, we have a scene from clearly one of the maps we saw in the trailer, the Italian Alps, what it seems like. But what's interesting about this image here is that it completely contrasts the image of this map we saw in the trailer. Now, there was a mention, as I remember, as dynamic map factors. I, back in my trailer analysis, pointed out this could be something like dynamic weather or dynamic time of the day. And this here seems to be an indication of just that. If there's dynamic weather in Battlefield 1, then this could be an indicator of that. We see here something that used to be sunny, at least we know it as a sunny map from the gameplay reveal trailer that we all got to see. Here, however, there seems to be some sort of thunderstorm rolling up, or at least heavy torrential rain, which would of course alter the playstyle and gameplay in its very core, even though the map stays the same. Next up, we've got some naval warfare. Now, first and foremost, significant about this is there's multiple battleships currently at the same time on the water, which kind of negates the fear of some of us in the community that thought, well, of course there may be these huge battleships, but there may only be one of them every time on each map, kind of one objective to fight over, one thing to control. But it looks like here you may have to actually have massive naval battles. If we're assuming that these 3 ships are from the same faction, that makes a minimum of 6 ships engaged in naval warfare on something like a conquest large map, making of course the scale of war to seen in Battlefield even bigger than what we've seen up till this date. Now, furthermore, the second part of information that we can extrapolate from this picture is kind of a rib boat replacement. Now, we didn't really know if kind of naval warfare was kind of moving over to something just centered around big battleships and planes, or if there would be smaller vehicles running around on our oceans as they do in Battlefield 4 still. And it seems like either something like a rib boat replacement or a tack boat replacement is currently to be seen in the water. It's kind of difficult to make out what exactly the soldiers are using here, what model it is, and what they have, but they seem to at least have a number of mounted machine guns that one of the soldiers is firing supposedly at aircraft. So if we go by this image, there is going to definitely be a selection of naval vehicles available to the player, from the very big battleships down to probably slightly faster moving attack craft, or maybe even just transportation. We have to of course wait to see that once we get our hands on some gameplay. Next up, we have another image here with another vehicle we haven't yet seen, the motorcycle with some form of armored side carriage to it, holding another soldier that is currently shooting at somebody holding a flamethrower, something we do already know from the reveal trailer, but we of course still not know if this is something like a battle pickup or if it's going to actually be equipable normal weapon. Now for this next image, pay close attention to the bottom right, where you can see the enemy soldier shooting at the main soldier who is holding a shotgun through this wooden glass door frame. Pay attention to the detailed destruction on this door frame. If this is some form of indication of the level of detailed destruction we can find in Battlefield 1, then anybody who's a big fan of destruction, which of course a lot of Battlefield players are, is going to be having wet dreams about this very door frame in the near future. Now this next image is so interesting because there's so much room for speculation here. Obviously this is London. You can see here the Big Ben Tower on your left, and in the background a Zeppelin emerging from the clouds accompanied by a number of biplanes. Now there's many different ways you can spin this. This could either just be a map exclusive to air superiority, game where we already know from the Battlefield franchise. Fighting over the skies of London certainly would be awesome, but it could also be a completely new game mode, something like escort, just for vehicles, of course, that is aerial combat, where they have to escort the payload, in this case the airship, to a certain destination so it can bomb a military installation at the heart of London. Now this is of course pure speculation, but the inclusion of London, the scenery of London in Battlefield 1 does throw up some questions, because of course there were never any enemy troops in England itself, only aerial combat over the skies of London. That was of course a thing. However, there was never any enemy troops marching through the streets of London or any other English city. Now the next 3 images are interesting because of the level of destruction present in them. In the first, we see a tank breaking through some form of wall, some sort of arc of maybe a palace or nice manor house. In the second, of course, we have something very close quarter infantry, an infantryman defending with a mounted machine gun, a staircase in what once more seems like some form of noble manor house. And last but not least, of course, something that looks like more urban styled warfare in the ruins of what once must have been a decent looking building somewhere in some form of town or maybe even a larger city. Once more, an image interesting because there's a new vehicle in it. This looks more like an infantry fighting vehicle, so this may be Battlefield 1's version of the IFV that we of course haven't yet seen, because while it's certainly armored pretty well, it's not going to stand much of a chance against a proper tank, and looks like it's only really armored with a mounted machine gun. So once more interesting because of course we're slowly getting more and more pieces of the puzzle to what Battlefield 1 could really look like. Now the last few images I want to run through real quick. One here we can see the view likely from the airship onto one of the more trench warfare styled maps. So it looks like you're going to have a pretty good view from one of these airships. I just found this a very interesting view, and I'm really kind of excited to see what the airships do in terms of kind of bombing raids, or if they're just kind of for more looking out and spotting enemy pushes, etc. The next image here is interesting because it once more displays that we're going to get to see some urban fighting, even though it's not so typical for World War I. From a historical accuracy point of view, DICE has said and gone out, we're not taking it too strict, we just want a fun game, and thus we're going to have plenty of close quarter infantry fighting going on as well, and this is just an indication of just that. We see here a partly destroyed town, there's fires still burning, we don't know if the combat is actually still happening or if it's only about to commence, and what here is to be seen is only the kind of consequence of the first bombing runs. Certainly an interesting image, but it probably throws up more questions than it answers any. Next up, and the last image we're looking at today, is once more an image of aerial combat, and there's two things I want to highlight here. Once more, 2 players in the airplane, but more importantly, look at the fine-grained destruction happening on the enemy's plane. I think in this case it's a German plane, the red plane. It seems to be falling to bits, and we already got a glimpse of this in the reveal trailer. We saw that planes do break apart, and we've seen it with the Zeppelin already as well. It doesn't seem like that things just destroy. They will get immobilized and taken apart bit by bit with a much more finer, detailed destruction going on, which of course is so very exciting and will add a huge amount of realism and tactical probably to any kind of combat involving vehicles, because of course you could disable somebody from actually flying proper, taking out one of their wings, which will mean they would have to abandon their vehicle instead of just rattling it down to 0 HP in a very arcadey fashion, the way it works, of course, in Battlefield 4 currently. Now, having covered all those images, I want to quickly remind you that I will be including the link to all the images, to the source of these images down below in the description in case you want to check them out for yourself. Also, a quick shout out to one of my mates which pointed out this leak to me, otherwise I wouldn't have noticed it just this quickly and wouldn't have been able to produce this video anymore for you guys today, so shout out to him. Furthermore, if you have opinions on this video or the topic in general, I'd love to hear them from you down below in the comment section. With all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next Battlefield 1 video.